All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely shatter the everyday illusion of what context actually means. We're unpacking a concept that literally sits at the very foundation of how we communicate, and really, how we understand the whole world around us. And look, getting this definition wrong? Well, it leaves us incredibly vulnerable to being manipulated without ever even realizing it.
So what exactly is context? You probably hear this word all the time, right? A politician gets on TV, they claim a damaging quote was taken out of context. Or say your friend sends you a screenshot of some bizarre text message, and your immediate reply is, I need some context here. But let's actually stop and ask ourselves what it really is. When we ask for context, what exactly are we asking for? Well, we usually just assume context is the objective reality around us. We kind of think of it like a theatrical stage. It's the room we're standing in, the literal physical background, the time of day, or maybe those objective social variables, like the age or the profession of the people talking. Basically, we treat context as this physical container that just sort of holds our conversations. But here's where it gets wild. Modern linguistics completely flips that assumption on its head. The emerging consensus in the study of discourse argues that context isn't what's around you at all. Actually, it's what is inside your head. It is entirely subjective. Literally, you and I could be standing in the exact same room, listening to the exact same speech, and our context would be completely different. To really grasp this paradigm shift, we have to look at Toon A. van Dijk's groundbreaking work. He established that the link between society and language is fundamentally cognitive. And wow, this is a massive shift in how we think about communication. Think about it. If context were just an objective physical situation, then everyone in the exact same room would speak and interpret things the exact same way. But they don't. Van Dijk proposes that our brains actively construct a subjective definition of the situation. We aren't just passively sitting in a room. Our minds are constantly building a unique interface that dictates exactly how we process information and how we choose to speak. This brilliant concept is what's known as the context model. It's your brain's ongoing, highly subjective definition of a situation. I like to think of it kind of like a background app running constantly in your brain, and it dynamically updates every single second. Imagine you're in the break room, right? You're joking around with your work best friend. Your posture is super relaxed, your vocabulary is casual, but suddenly your boss walks in. Now, the physical room hasn't changed. The temperature is exactly the same, the coffee machine is still humming in the corner, but instantly your context model updates. You stand up a little straighter, your tone shifts, you choose totally different words. That mental interface regulates your appropriateness in real time, shifting purely based on the model running inside your head.
All right, let's move into the 4 levels of context. Because context doesn't just govern our immediate personal interactions, it actually scales all the way up.
According to this fascinating framework called the discourse historical approach, which linguists use to study how language and society shape each other over time, context exists on 4 distinct levels. Step 1 is the immediate cotext. That's literally the words sitting right next to each other in a sentence. Like knowing the word bark means a dog's sound just because the very next word is loudly. Step 2 is intertextuality. This is how a text relates to past texts or speeches. It's what happens when a speaker subtly quotes a famous movie line to get a laugh, relying entirely on your shared memory of that film to make the joke land. Then step 3 gets even bigger. Institutional frames. Think of the unwritten rules of whispering inside a library, or the strict formal procedures of giving testimony in a courtroom. And finally, step 4. This encompasses the broader sociopolitical and historical circumstances. These are the massive grand theories of society, history, and culture that dictate how entire generations understand huge concepts like freedom, duty, or authority.
Now, Michael Meyer's model brilliantly illustrates how discourse basically triangulates between all these layers. What this means is that you act as an active analyst, constantly adjusting a camera lens on your own life every single day. Depending on what you're reading or hearing, your brain is instantly pulling from multiple directions all at once. You look at the immediate words being spoken, you instantly recall past conversations, you process the rules of the institution you're currently standing in, and then you filter the whole shebang through your grand view of society. Your brain blends all of these gears and layers together in mere milliseconds to create meaning. You don't even realize you're doing it, but you are constantly zooming in on the immediate words and zooming out to your societal worldview, adjusting that lens back and forth just to bring the world into focus.
So what happens when context is missing? What if that background app in your brain just crashes because it doesn't have enough data to build the model? Well, to answer that, we have to look at this bizarre and honestly hilarious quote from the diaries of the British writer Alan Bennett. He reflects on a highly confusing conversation that perfectly highlights the absolute panic our brains feel when a context model completely fails. He essentially felt like he was losing his mind.
So the story goes, Bennett overheard some people in a local fish and chip shop having a casual bit of chat about a kestrel being kept under the counter. Now Bennett's brain instantly pulls up its existing knowledge. Okay, a kestrel is a bird of prey. So he starts desperately trying to rationalize why on earth a live bird of prey is sitting in a cage under the counter at a local chip shop. His mental gymnastics just go into absolute overdrive. He even edges around the counter to see if he can get a glimpse of this poor bird, deeply concerned and wondering if keeping a hawk trapped near a deep fryer is some kind of animal cruelty.
Well, it turns out, to his massive relief and immense embarrassment, Kestrel was simply a new brand of lager they were selling. But as Bennett's embarrassment perfectly illustrates, when we can't ask for context, our brains will invent the most elaborate, highly improbable scenarios rather than face a vacuum of meaning. We absolutely hate not knowing how things fit together. That vacuum of meaning is literally terrifying to the human mind. So if the context isn't provided, your brain is going to build a bridge out of thin air, even if it involves a captive hawk in a fast food restaurant, just to make the sentence make sense.
Which brings us to why context matters. Let's tie this all together and look at why this subjective mental gymnastics actually impacts our daily lives.
Because context is a mental model, it's plastic, and it is highly contestable. This is a game changer of a realization. It means your own personal history, your social roles, and your specific cultural knowledge act as the primary filter for absolutely everything you experience. Context isn't just a fixed, innocent background. It actively establishes power dynamics and social relationships. It literally dictates what counts as truth in any given interaction. Think about how a news anchor or a political campaign builds a context model for the viewer. When they frame a story, they aren't just giving you isolated facts. They are actively handing you the lens through which you should view those facts. They are carefully selecting exactly what history, what institutional norms, and what social rules you should apply to their words. Context isn't just a piece of information we happen to lack from time to time. It's an incredibly powerful tool that's used on us every single day to shape exactly how we interpret reality. So, I'll leave you with this final, crucial thought. Since context isn't an objective reality, but an invented lens that our brains use to construct meaning, we have to be incredibly vigilant. When you watch the news, scroll through social media, or listen to a debate, ask yourself, who is carefully crafting the context models that shape your world? Are you building your own context, or are you just accepting the vacuum of meaning that someone else has politely filled for you? Seriously, think about that the next time someone asks you for a little context.